Frid och shalom älskade vänner, välkommen till den 19 december. Vi har satt ihop lite klipp åt er och bakom ser ni schackpjäser som snurrar runt. Och det är precis vad Gud gör i den här världen. Det står att han leder konungarnas hjärtan som vattenbäckar. Och det som har hänt förut händer igen, säger Salomo. Så vi kan alltså se på tiden då. För Gud så är den ju liksom rund, det händer och så händer det igen. Och de mönstren kan vi ju se i Bibeln. Men som tur är har ju Gud inte förlorat kontrollen, utan hans profetior ska ju uppfyllas. Och vi ser ju nu de här hotjerna där som skjuter ner skjuter på skeppen där så de går runt Röda havet istället. Och det här kommer ju att bli en ekonomisk kris för Egypten, för de får ju in massor av pengar genom Suezkanalen. Och om du läser profetian om Egypten i Jesaja 19 så står det om att landets stödjepelare ska krossas. Det är ju en intressant profetia med tanke på det här. Om det är ekonomin som ska haverera eller vad det kan vara. Sen har vi den här styrkan som drar ner där, som ska ta hand om hotjerna. Vi har Kadis klipp och sen har vi våra vanliga klipp. Och så avslutar vi med newsflash. Det gillar ju tydligen många. De här klippen som vi klipper ut ur olika nyhetstidningar och presenterar. Tyvärr går de ju lite fort, men då får ni stanna då. Gud välsigna er och så hörs vi under dagen. Amen.
That the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. When they say peace and safety, sudden destruction is going to come. And that destruction won't be pretty. But if you are a child of God and you walk in the light, you will not be overtaken as a thief. Look around, everybody. We are undoubtedly in those days, and these stories will remind you of that very fact. All right, folks, let's get into this one. This is just unbelievable. You know, it's interesting to me because every single time I open up all of the news sources that I go to, and there's a lot of reliable ones, some very unreliable, but when you look at the headlines, you realize very, very quickly that we are rapidly heading towards the world of Revelation 13 and everything that surrounds it. And one of the things that we know that the Bible tells us is that we are going to see an increase in all kinds of activity. Persecution of Christians, anti-Semitism, we're seeing that like crazy. The Bible tells us about the restructuring of governments around the world, tells us about an economy that we're heading into that's going to just rapidly change everything as we know it. And these three stories are just super clearly indicative of all of that. It is absolutely unbelievable. The first story that I'm looking at is just, look, it shouldn't surprise me, but I can just tell you this right now. The United States of America is rapidly increasing the rate at which God is going to judge it. The kind of things that we are doing is absolutely insane. This headline in Axios, it just says it all. It says, U.S. delaying sale of M16 rifles to Israel over settler violence. That's what they call settler violence. But here's the thing that's really interesting to me, folks. Before we even get into this, before we get into the contents of this story, it's amazing to me how they will sell rifles to all kinds of people, including those who are actually destroying our country and destroying the countries of many others. Yet when it comes to selling it to Israel, they don't want Israel to be able to buy these rifles because they don't want the Israelis to defend themselves. It's markedly evil, okay? Let me read this story to you, and it just makes me sick. It says the Biden administration is again, that's the key word, again, holding up the licenses for selling more than 20,000 U.S.-made rifles to Israel over concerns about attacks by extremist Israeli settlers against Palestinian civilians in the occupied West Bank. I mean, can it be any more backwards? I mean, I don't have to show you the footage of what happened on October the 7th. I don't have to talk to you about the just terrible, absolutely terrible anti-Semitic sentiment that exists in Judea, Samaria. I'm not even going to call it the West Bank. I refuse to call it the West Bank. I can direct you to go back to the video I made where I translated Mahmoud Abbas, who is the leader of the Palestinian Authority, who, by the way, hasn't had an election in 16 years or so, right? Basically say that Hitler was, in essence, justified in exterminating Jews, right? No joke, okay? And the United States is concerned about extremist Israeli settlers? Can it get any darker? Can it get any more insane? And yet, the United States of America, while they're doing this, is training Palestinian Authority soldiers to do exactly what many of these Hamas terrorists just did. This is not a joke, folks. It's absolutely serious. This is absolutely crazy, right? Let's look at the facts behind this. It's absolutely crazy. Israel, in the first week of the war, requested the rifles for civilian initial response teams in Israeli villages close to the borders with Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. Those teams of local residents receive weapons and training from the Israeli police in order to be first responders in case of a terror attack, which, by the way, folks, what's written in that article is absolutely true. It's not wrong. These men and women who are living in many of these kibbutzes and settlements, they're all being trained as civilians to act initially in order to keep people safe, right? When these attacks take place. This is what they have to do, okay? So it's completely legitimate. These are people that receive training. They're disciplined in what they're doing. They're not like some extremist militia. But anyway, I'll just leave that be, right? This is absolutely crazy. Folks, the article goes on to tell us some facts that are absolutely insane. Let me read this paragraph to you, and this makes me sick. I don't even like the way these fake news people characterize certain people, right? They say the Israeli request was treated with caution by the Biden administration because of concerns that Ben-Gvir, the ultra-nationalist minister of national security who oversees the police, would distribute the rifles to extremist settlers in the West Bank, according to U.S. officials. What an absurd and these people have lost their minds, okay? Let's really talk about this for just a second. Innocent lives were lost. We're seeking to defend ourselves. Yet we're giving Ukraine billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to kill their own citizens. Think about how absolutely insane this is. We won't give them 20,000 rifles? Folks, I don't care what anybody says. This is 100% anti-Semitic. The Biden regime has always been this way, and it's crazy. And by the way, this isn't just happening with the United States government. It's happening with other private businesses. We don't need to get into BDS and all the other nonsense that's going on there. How about this report? And by the way, this report is absolutely crazy. This report says Puma, yes, that's the brand, right? Puma terminates sponsorship deal with Israelis' national soccer team. Let me read the article. It says, the German sports apparel brand Puma has confirmed that it will not renew its sponsorship with Israeli national football team next year. German brand, by the way, of all brands, right? I mean, I don't even need to get into this. This decision, as clarified by a company spokesman on Tuesday, was made prior to the ongoing conflict involving Israeli military actions in the Gaza Strip. Puma's spokesperson mentioned that the company has recently signed contracts with several new national teams, details of which are set to be announced later in the year, and the contracts with new national teams, including Israel and Serbia, are due to expire in 2024. But if you really want to have the answer of what really happened here, let me read the last paragraph of this article. It says, over the years, there have been increasing calls to boycott Puma due to its association with the Israeli national team. These calls have become more pronounced in the wake of the recent conflict in Gaza, which has lasted for 67 days. According to the latest figures from the Gaza Ministry of Health, you know what? I'm not even going to read that last line because the figures from the Gaza Ministry of Health are propagandist and lies. So how about I just leave it alone? But what is absolutely insane here is even the liberal-leaning left news media is telling the truth about what's going on, right? They are walking away from Israel because they're facing pressure from the world about their associations with Israel. I feel bad for Puma because I can just tell you this right now. Their brand is not going to do well after doing what they're doing, but I'm going to leave that be. My whole point behind these first two articles is to demonstrate the fact that anti-Semitism is on the rise. Now, I want to read this article because this article is remarkable, and it is something that goes to exactly the same issues that I have been talking about. Here it is. Here's the headline. You ready for this? Brace yourself, folks. EU to open membership talks with Ukraine and Moldova. Let me read this. This is the BBC, by the way. The article says this: European leaders have decided to open European Union membership talks with Ukraine and Moldova and to grant candidate status to Georgia. This is ridiculous. Let me read on. It says Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky held a decision made at a summit in Brussels as a victory for his country and Europe. A spokesperson for Charles Michel, the president of the European Council, said that agreement was unanimous. Now, Hungary has long opposed talks starting with Kiev, but did not veto the move. Prime Minister Viktor Orban left the room momentarily in what officials described as a pre-agreed and constructive manner while the other 26 leaders went ahead with the vote. He then distanced himself from his colleagues with a video message on Facebook in which he says the EU membership of Ukraine is a bad decision. Hungary does not want to participate in this bad decision and therefore stayed away from the decision today. By the way, you want to know why that he feels that way? He feels that way probably because he understands the biblical precedent for many of the things that are going to be happening in the last days. He also understands the fact that he doesn't want to enter into World War III with Russia, and he also understands that this is exactly the same thing as expanding NATO. And if you expand NATO, you are going to destabilize the region in ways that you can't even begin to imagine. If you listen to what the Prime Minister of Hungary actually has to say about a lot of this, your mind might be blown to find out exactly how accurate and how obvious these things really are. The situation with Ukraine is being used by the enemy to continue to orchestrate all of the things that he's seeking to put into play for when he begins to put into motion all of the things that we read about in Revelation 13 and the final Antichrist. Folks, we read about a time when there will be a consolidation of nations. That'll be 10 nations. They will eventually give their power to this final Antichrist. And folks, we are beginning to watch all of this normalize. We're watching it all happen, and it's beginning to change. And it makes me sick because these people are talking about embracing what they call democracy and freedom and prosperity for everybody, when we all know that Zelensky wants nothing to do with any of that. He's a power-hungry dictator. All of that is beside the point. The real point here is we are headed in the direction of the last days. If we can't see this clearly, then we've got bigger problems coming. We know we are moving in that specific direction. We're seeing signs of it. The European Union is changing rapidly. We're beginning to watch all kinds of things happening with the United Nations. There's a lot of struggles that are beginning to really ensue within NATO. I think it's imploding. We're watching all kinds of things happen in front of us. Look at all of the geopolitics of the Middle East. We spend lots of hours talking about that. We are undoubtedly in the last days. And folks, I want to make myself very clear because it's critically important. The Bible tells us something very important about the time in which we are living, and I don't want you to forget this. I don't want you to lose sight of what the Bible says. Let me read this to you. This is in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, and the Apostle Paul is talking about the end times. He says this: "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren," pay attention to this, folks, "but you, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. You are all children of the light and the children of the day, and we are not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore, let us" what? "Not sleep, as do others." But here it is. Here's the command. Ready? "Let us watch and be sober." Folks, the fastest way to lose our sobriety is walking in sin. When we walk in purity, we remain sober. We actually keep ourselves in a place where we're able to see things clearly. And notice what he says. He says, watch, not just watch, but watch and be sober. And look what he goes on to say. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. But let us who are of the day, notice this, be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love for a helmet, the hope of salvation. We have it all. We have it all. We have the salvation that maintains our sanity, that protects our mind and our heart, that continues to give us everything that we need to move forward in these last days. Folks, we are undoubtedly called by God to be watchmen and women, and we are called to walk sober-mindedly because the Lord wants us to be aware. Our time here in this world is coming to an end. We are not guaranteed the next day, and we know that we're living in the last days. So it is time to fight the good fight. It's time to be sober. It's time to be watchful. And it is time for us to keep our minds and our hearts pure before the Lord.
قبولا ووسادا أنجر الفقه قبولا ووسادا فاجر الفقه على الدرب جهادا فاجر الفقه على الدرب جهادا
Down with the Nazi regime, I guess.
You Nazi ass bitches, fuck y'all. Fuck Israel and fuck the settler ass state.
Literally.
Gross.
I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank.
Hello, Mr. President. We in Israel hear that you're alarmed by the extremist settlers attacking innocent Palestinians, leading to your decision to temporarily hold back the shipment of rifles to our country. And we would like to ask you one single question. Could you kindly provide a name, one name, of an innocent Palestinian Arab who lost their life in a premeditated attack carried out by a Jewish settler? I'm not referring to Palestinians killed while attempting to harm Jews, but rather a case where a settler deliberately left his home with the intention of killing a Palestinian. One name. From the beginning of this year. How about in the year 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017? Not even one incident, sir. Now let's look at the Jews that were intentionally slaughtered by those you worry about so much from the beginning of this year alone. February 26, 2 Jewish brothers on their way back home were fatally shot point blank in the murderous town of Hawara. Sweets were handed out the next day in the Palestinian streets. April 7th, a mother and 2 of her daughters were shot to death while driving to a vacation. Not one condemnation coming out from the innocent Palestinian society. May 30th, a father of 2 was shot to death in his car. July 20th, 4 Jews were murdered in a gasoline station near the ancient Jewish village of Eli. The terrorist family were subsequently added to the Palestinian authorities' payroll. August 19th, a father and his son were shot to death in the murderous town of Hawara, turning the perpetrators into heroes within their community. August 21st, a mother of 3 was murdered in front of one of her daughters, and celebrations followed in the innocent Palestinian society. According to the official Israeli government site, in January 2023, there were 187 attacks against Jews in Judea and Samaria alone. 157 terror attacks in February, 183 in March, April, 147 terror attacks against real innocent civilians. Add to these figures dozens more casualties within the Green Line up to October 7th and hundreds more beyond, and it's impossible not to see a clear picture. Mr. President, if given the opportunity, the Arabs surrounding the Jewish settlements would slaughter our children, rape our wives, exactly like they did to us in the Gaza border, and we don't need another October 7th to prove it. With all due respect, Mr. President, but your characterization of the righteous Jews of Judea and Samaria as violent and notorious people is nothing less than another blood libel against the Jewish people, and is a very big moral stain.
was Palestinian! Jesus 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 was Palestinian! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine!
Terminals were reopened. And here we have some interesting video footage coming out of Russia. This is coming from one of Moscow's infectious disease hospitals, and you can see this massive line of ambulances. Look at this, guys. This is insane. Over 24 ambulances here parked outside one of the Moscow infectious disease wards. And a lot of people are suspecting that this was because of an outbreak of pneumonia in Moscow. We do know that there is an outbreak of pneumonia across the world right now, mostly affecting kids. But this is very, very concerning. There's also that new variant, the JN1 or whatever it's called. And those cases have been spiking.
Look at what is happening in Palestine. The Zionists are occupiers. They are the aggressors. They came to a land that doesn't belong to them. They are the criminals. But what do we hear the world saying? They are saying that Israel, that's what they claim that the name of that country is. So we're just using the names that they use. The country's name is Palestine, Philistine. It is not Israel. In any event, they say that Israel has the right to defend herself. Seriously? The occupier, the invader, the aggressor, they have the right to defend themselves? Anyone with an ounce of logic and understanding will see how wrong that is. And so you will learn from this that the disbelievers at large, we're speaking in general terms, and this is exactly what is unfolding before our eyes. Understand that they stand together against Islam and the Muslims. So when they say that Israel has the right to defend herself, what they are saying is that the Zionists have the right to wipe out the Muslims of Palestine. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الكفرة والمشركين اللهم دمر أعداء الدين وأهلك الزنادقة والملحدين اللهم انصر المجاهدين في سبيلك في كل مكان اللهم ثبت أقدامهم واربط على قلوبهم وأنزل السكينة عليهم وانصرهم على عدوهم وعدوك يا عزيز يا قوي اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان اللهم عليك باليهود الغاصبين اللهم عليك باليهود المجرمين اللهم عليك بهم فإنهم لا يعجزونك اللهم أرنا فيهم يوما أسودا اللهم رد كيدهم في نحورهم اللهم زلزل الأرض من تحت أقدامهم.
كوبري حنطوب الآن زحف نزوح عدد من المواطنين. كوبري حنطوب